Hello and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, hi, I'm Cassidy. If it's not, thanks for always tuning into my videos. We're doing a video that's a first on my channel because this is the first year I've read enough indie, I've read indie really, to make a top 10 indie fantasy list for 2022. So these are the indie books that I loved. These are my favorite books of the year, the top 10. We are going to start at the bottom of the list and move up to the top of the list. This is a list that is in order. I am going from 10 to 1. I will put the disclaimer out that if you ask me on different days, the list could look a little bit different, just a little bit of rearranging, but as of right now, this is what the list looks like, and the 10 books would stay the same. It's just like maybe some of the orders would switch, and like the 10th book wouldn't end up in the first spot, but like maybe 10 and 9 would be switched type style. Let's roll with it. Let's just get on with it. In number 10th spot, we have one of the first ones I read, which is Of Blood and Fire by Ryan Cahill. This author is the only author that shows up twice on this list. I really liked Of Blood and Fire. It was actually only a 3-star read for me, but like I like a 3-star. There's so much potential in this story, and when I think back on my time with this story, it is a really good experience and I really enjoy it. Obviously I had criticisms of it, and I think in my vlog with it I'm very critical about things, but there is a point where like I enjoyed it. I had fun with this book. I enjoyed the read, and that I want to continue the series. And so I think that's why it deserved that 10th spot. Of Blood and Fire is a classic fantasy tale. We're following a boy who ends up finding a dragon egg, and he's not supposed to be the chosen one, but he is the chosen one, but there just was never supposed to be a chosen one again. It's a fun story. There are orcs, there are people with magic, and very classic to like the style of Aragon. Like the first half of this book is literally the story, the premise of Aragon, but it's like the premise that most Boy and His Dragon books go on. I don't actually tend to enjoy Boy and His Dragon books as much as I like dragon books. I like a more unique take on dragons, but this one did work for me. I recommend this to people, and it is a loved fantasy for a reason in my eyes. In number 9, we have Small Miracles by Olivia Atwater. This book honestly shocked me by how much I enjoyed it. Like, I am shook to my core. This one is a cozy fantasy, which is something I would have said that there's no chance of me liking, but I'm glad that I had to give it a chance because it is a SPFBO finalist, and for SPFBO Cassidy's version I had to read them all, and I'm really happy I did because I actually really enjoyed this one and had a fun time with it. This one we're following our main character Gadriel, who is a fallen angel, and Gadriel spends their time just making people sin in small ways. So think eating a piece of chocolate or saying the first thing that comes to your mind instead of like being polite. Something like that, like small sins. Like they're not going around like killing people or doing any of that fun stuff. Gadriel ends up needing to do something for their sibling who is an angel and helping that angel out, and in the process of doing this favor ends up falling back in love with the job they used to have. And it's just really cozy. It has good messages and good vibes. It's got some humor to it. It's got, I don't know, it's a book that sets out to do what it's meant to do, and it does it well, and I just had a fun time with it and a really good experience. So yeah, I liked it. It's number 9. In number 8 spot, we have A King's Radiance, which I read for a SPFBO vlog because it was a contender in SPFBO. It didn't make it to the finalists at all. I'm really happy I read this one. I can't wait for the second book in this series. This one, I will say, like, in this book I noticed the indie writing, which is just like some of the clunky dialogue and a little bit not polished writing. I also noticed it in Of Blood and Fire, and it's one of my big criticisms. It is something that an author can improve on very easily, and so I always try and remember that and don't let it halt my enjoyment too much when like I'm liking the story, but like the writing could use a little bit of improvement. And I do think most of the time between 1 and 2 you see a drastic improvement in writing style in traditional publishing too. But I really liked the story. We have 3 siblings, 3 POVs. One gets taken away as a kid and ends up being a slave, and she has a very interesting POV because she's like special. The like king's enforcers take her away to be like a prize slave essentially. And then you have one of the brothers who is trying to fight hard to get her back, and then you have another brother who's just kind of like accepting it all and like wants her back but isn't going to go out of norms of the societal norms to get her back, where the other brother is like, get her back now, I'm gonna fight you all to the death style, and like leaves the kingdom, all of that fun stuff. There is a cool magic system based on the sun and light in this, where when a character goes out into the sun, it like charges up their battery, and at some point it'll have to be released. And so if you don't know how to control this, sometimes it'll just like all come out at once and kill you. Often people, even with control, end up with like burns and scars because the light will burn them. It's really fascinating, and you can't stop the sun from like charging your battery. So if it touches you, so you have to go out like covered, you have to only go out at night. All these really interesting elements. I really adored the magic system in this. I thought it was really cool and really intricate, and I liked a lot of the politics in this too. So I really liked this one, and I can't wait for the next one. In 7th spot, we have Illborn by Daniel T. Jackson. I read the same vlog that I read of Blood and Fire. This was actually a very successful vlog for me. And Illborn, I gave a high 4 stars. I praised this one. I can't wait for the second one, which comes out this month. And this one is one of those indies that feels like it's polished writer. It's a seasoned writer. It's beautifully done. I'm obsessed with the writing in this. One of my complaints was that the 4 characters don't come together at all, and I can't see why they come together. They have individual plots, but I wanted an overall arching plot a little bit more, and that the female characters I don't think are as well written as the male characters. That happens a lot though, and I still enjoyed those female characters, and they were still my favorite characters in the story. There's 4 POVs. We're in a world where Adul emerged from the deserts of the Holy Land and had these magical powers, and he united all the lands but then ascended to heaven. Over 800 years later, these humans are popping up with these abilities that Adul had, and they have to like figure out what these visions and what these powers are for and how to keep them. But then there's also a religious fanatic that's like fighting against them, and I think it's really interesting done. I love religious themes in my fantasy, and if you are one of those people like me, pick this one up. There is very heavy religion themes and discussions and on like extremists and all of that. It's really well done. I really liked this one. In 6th place, we have The Umbral Storm by Alec Hudson. Again, I read this for my SPFBO vlog, number 1, and I'm very happy I did. This one, again, has some of those, like, indie writing things a little clunky, and some of the characters aren't as well fleshed out as most people want them to be, but they still tugged on my heartstrings. I still adored them, and I think that's what made me like this story. And the world is just so cool, and I mean, I really liked the magic system and the progression fantasy of it. The Umbral Storm follows a world where there was the heart of the world, and it was shattered, and fragments went all over the world. And now when someone finds a fragment, it can give them powers, but only if you have the ability to be sharded. So like not everyone can just take a shard and have powers. If you are one of the sharded few, you will have the ability to take in a shard, if that makes sense. And when you put a shard in, you start to get powers, but like you train that one power and then you max out, but you can get another shard and put another shard in, and then you get more abilities, and you get stronger with each shard, and there's like different abilities you can get. And I think that was really cool. This made me want to try more progression fantasy. I adored that part of it. And there's also like the voids and the giant monsters, a little bit of sci-fi elements that I really enjoy in my fantasy, and I'm really excited to see where this story goes. I now own another Alec Hudson. I can't wait to read more from Alec Hudson, and yeah, I own The Crimson Queen, and we are reading it for the Indie Archive, which is Mel and mine's Patreon top tier book club. I think we're reading it in July, I think is when we're reading the next Alec Hudson. But yeah, I can't wait for the next book in the series. I really adored this one. Had a fun time with it. I need a coffee break. So much talking. And then in 5th place, we have Winds of Strife by Yuji Gutman. This was a story that actually really surprised me. I was not expecting to love it the way I did. I was not expecting to have such deep discussions in a story like this. Winds of Strife is a story about our protagonist who joins the witch hunters in order to destroy them from the inside. So in this world, if you are a woman who practices magic, you are considered a witch, and the king will come and kill you. The king is scared because he thinks these women witches are making the nights grow longer until eventually you will have no daylight. You'll only be in utter darkness. And obviously something happens to our protagonist, which he then joins the witch hunters in order to destroy them. But along the way, he's lost a lot of his humanity. He's done a lot of bad things. Obviously, he's doing these bad things for the right reasons, but that doesn't contradict the fact that he's still doing bad things. And this story is really, really deep, and I love the discussion of whether our protagonist is a victim, a hero, or a villain, and it's just very well thought out. And the discussions on what people do out of fear and how fear can be so harmful because you do things out of fear that are hurtful and harmful. A lot of like discriminatory actions come from just a place of fear, and it's just a really, really well done story. It's very intricate. We have lots of conversations on grief, and also with a really cool magic system, because we have like an emotional magic system where like if you're angry you can use fire, if you're sad you can use this, and like the faster you change your emotions, the less strong they are, but like the stronger your emotion, the less you can switch between emotions, things like that. It's really interesting, and I highly, highly want everyone to pick this one up. This one is really, really good. I really liked it, so hope you do. In fourth place, we have The Swordsman's Lament by G.M. White. I used to rave about this book on my channel quite a bit. Around Realmathon, this was like my indie that I was suggesting to everyone. Same with In Whateverathon. And then I think it just got buried by other books, which often happens. Recency bias comes around. But when making this list, I said, holy crap, I forgot how much I loved The Swordsman's Lament. I gave this one a very high 4 stars. I read it with Illborn and Of Darkness and Light in that vlog. I just had a really fun time with this one. I would probably call this a cozy fantasy. It's very low fantasy. It is a murder mystery with our character who is the king's champion, the king's like guard essentially, and when the prince is killed, he has to figure out who killed the prince because everyone thinks it was him. It's a lot of fun. I loved our character. I think he has some humor and he holds himself the way that the Greatcoats do in Sebastian de Castell's writing, and I just had a really fun time with this one. It's short and I need to continue the series because it is a series, even though this stands so well on its own and is so bingeable, and I really adored this one. I just want more people to read it, so read it. In third place, we have Nomads of the Sea by Kobe Zucker. This was an honorable mention on my best of the year list, but it definitely makes it to the quite top of my indie fantasy love. I adored this book. It's long, it's chunky, and this cover screams romance, but I promise you, it is a long, epic fantasy with a really cool magic system. We have a magic system that's based on like breathing and breathing in magic to breathe it out. Super cool. We have like you can burn up your lungs. It was really cool. We have 3 main characters. We have a setting that is on boats. Like the one POV, their culture, they live on the water. They live on like stilted houses and they have like canoes and like boats, and like a lot of the book happens on boats, which I think is really fascinating and interesting. And then we have discussions on colonialism and anti-colonialism specifically, obviously. And then we just have interesting ideas between cultures, and there is talk about like spirits and things like that. And it's really long. It's a very character-driven book, but with a lot of deep conversations, and we talk about grief, we talk about things like that. Obviously, if you can see a theme for me, I love books with like deeper discussions. I don't want the entire book to be a discussion. I want it to be a good book fourth and foremost, but I want those conversations in the back end of my book. I want to be thinking about these things. I want to have characters that feel these things. Like grief is a big part of human life, whether it is lots of grief or lack of grief. These things happen, and I like to have my characters feel human. I like them to feel real. I want them to go through emotions that I have emotions that I go through. Like I want to relate to them on so many levels, and that's just what this story does. I really cared for these characters. I really adored this one. It is so underrated. More people need to read it. It has like the world building of Sanderson, but the pacing of a Hobb book. And like, I get that Hobb drags, so like I know why people like complain about the pacing of Hobb, but like, like that slow character driven that Hobb does, like that pace, that's what this does. It's incredible. I loved it. Please read it. In the second spot, we have The Fall by Ryan Cahill. This is the novella that comes before/after Of Blood and Fire. This gave me everything I wanted from Of Blood and Fire. Obviously, Of Blood and Fire made this list as number 10, but A Fall made it to number 2. It was a 5-star read for me. It had dragons, dragon riders, dragons with big personalities. It had military battles. It showed me so much of the world. It got me so intrigued to continue in this world, and it did a lot of things for me. It's so short. It's a little novella, and I absolutely adored it. And I recommend reading it after Of Blood and Fire, not before, even though I think that The Fall was a better story. But I think that having read Of Blood and Fire and having the details that I had in Of Blood and Fire made me love The Fall more. But yeah, I definitely loved that one. So you should read it. And then in first place, no one's surprised, because A Touch of Light by Thiago Abdallah. I love this book. I believe this video is coming out after my best of the year, and so I'm not going to talk a lot about this book because this is actually #1 in my best of the year, so no one is shocked that it's here. But if you haven't read this book, please do. This book has me so excited to see what's going on next. The writing in it is professional. Like, there's none of that indie writing for sure. It feels like it has been edited, and like your heart and soul is put into all of these books, but like I can feel the heart in this book. I love these characters. I feel for these characters. I am excited to see where the story goes. I loved the magic system, the world. There's just so much about this book that I really truly loved, and I just need more people to read it. The next book, Shade of Madness, comes out this month, so we all need to get to it. We need to read this, and then if you haven't read this, you need to read this, and then you need to read A Shade of Madness ASAP. And I believe that the third book will be coming out shortly after that. Like, I've talked to Thiago, who said that he wants them to come out pretty consecutive so that you don't have to wait like 3 years. I'm gonna guess this means like a year in between each book, but I can take a year. A year is fast enough for me. As long as I'm not waiting like 3-5 years, I'm good. I'm good. If you haven't read this, you should. It follows a world where there are these zombies coming up like humans. There's like a plague that turns humans into zombies, and our 3 characters have to figure out what, why, how to stop it. All of that fun stuff. There is a cool magic system that involves griffins. There is one character who has a curse where she like kills everyone because she feels everyone's emotions. It's really cool. There's a lot of different cultures, a lot of world building. Really fascinating stuff in this one. I really adored it. So you should too. And you should read it. So there you go. Those are my top 10 indies of the year. Indie fantasy has made a gigantic impact on my life this year. I didn't read that many. I think I only actually read 30 indies in total, and probably 10 of those were horror or dark romance. So next year I definitely want to continue reading indies. I would like to see a greater number of indie fantasies read for me, and I'm definitely going to make it a push to read more. I really, really adored it. It has changed the outcome of my channel a lot because I've focused a lot on indie fantasy on this channel. I still read traditional published, like, let's not pretend I don't, but I definitely have been wanting to make a lot more indie content and be someone you can come to watch indie reviews. And to be very honest about my indie reviews, I'm not afraid to say I don't like a book, and that will never change regardless of what publishing, what genre, anything. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you to everyone who wants to see indie content, because I know I do, so I hope you do too. If you have a favorite indie of the year, let me know down below. And if you are shocked by any of the books on this list, or the rankings of the books on this list, or any books that weren't on this list, let me know down below. If you're not feeling chatty and you just want to leave me an emoji just to say you were here, leave me a lightning, like a storm emoji. And then if you want to connect with me on other platforms, my Bookstagram, my Book Twitter, my Goodreads, and my Patreon, all linked in the description bar below. Have yourselves an absolutely remarkable day.